Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're just still people arriving. I'm just going to move on to our next slide. Just to let you know, we're here to talk about how to future-proof your research or development training in times of extreme uncertainty. So while everyone's still joining, please take the time if you can to introduce yourself in the chat box. Just add your name and your organisation so that everyone knows who's here. And also one word that describes how you're feeling right now. So I'm currently running a webinar, so I'm feeling pretty energized. How are you feeling? One word just to describe that for now. And if you don't mind when you're doing that, if you can, when you're doing it in the chat box, just select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your chat. You can also get in touch directly with me by choosing just Alison to contact, but preferably so that all panelists can see. All right, overwhelmed, Liz. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Gilbert's feeling curious. Good. That's a good starting point. Relaxed. I like that. Chilled. Very good. Hungry. Well, we have chosen lunchtime, Amani. We have chosen lunchtime. It's not the best time. Looking forward to it. Hi, Valerie. Yeah, great. Feeling excited and well. That's great. Someone's had lunch. Oh, Joanne, nice to see you. Had lunch. Okay, great. It's good to see so many people here. Sleepy. Well, hopefully Heather will wake you up with the webinar today. We've got lots of interesting stuff to cover. And as you can see, we've got a rather dramatic title for this webinar, same as last time. We may be over-promising here. I'm not sure that we can fully deliver, but what I can guarantee is that this will be a shared experience and food for thought that might inform and help to inform your decision making in the months ahead. We wanted to focus in on something that for anyone involved in developing researchers and academics is right at the forefront of their mind at the moment. And particularly for those of you who have got PhD students in new cohorts starting in September, we know that this is a big issue for you just now. How do you plan? How do you make decisions when it's so uncertain what's happening? So today we've got three fantastic guest speakers. They're going to talk to us about their experience and how they see things progressing in the next few months and then in the longer term. And what I really hope is that this gives you a sense of what's possible and what's realistic under the current situation. Circumstances are really unsettled just now, right across the UK and Europe. There's different rules in place. We've got each university making its own decisions at different times about when and how and who will be able to start back in the physical sites and campuses. So in the meantime, I think we're pretty much all of us still working from home, just trying to keep things going, keep things together. So with that in mind, and just to hear a little bit more before we launch into the full webinar, for my own interest, I would love to hear how you're coping. And this month, for this webinar, my focus is on haircuts. I'd like to get a sense of where you're all at. So in the last 3 months, in the chat box, I'd like you to, if you've cut your own hair in the last 3 months, type a 1 in the chat box. 2, if you've had a non-qualified family member cut your hair. 3, if you've cut someone else's hair. And a 4 for anything that's more radical than that. You know, I know a couple of our trainers early on went for a completely shaven look. Maybe you've gone for dreadlocks, I don't know. So please share where you're at in terms of haircuts. I'll be interested to hear. Oh, some of you, you're just ponytails. Oh, a skin fade. Wow, I'm not entirely sure where that is. Mullets. Mullets, I like that. Oh, and you've done dogs as well, dog haircuts and everything. Oh, I wish I could see some of these looks. This is the drawback of webinars. I don't actually you get to see me, I don't get to see you. I wish I could see some of these wild looks. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's move into the main part of the webinar now and really just introduce you to what it's all about. Our goal from today is really for you to pick up some new ideas, perhaps a fresh perspective, a new approach, some practical tips that will allow you to create an action as a result of this that will help you to keep moving forward. And I think if you can pick up an idea, an insight, some kind of action from this hour, that will be a good piece of time spent on it. So the guidelines, just a few guidelines to help everyone get the most out of it. We're recording it. The link's going to be made available after the webinar, so please do share that with anyone that you think might find it useful. Please type in your questions and comments in the chat box. You can make your questions public so everyone can see, or private, just so that the Skillfluence team can see you. Sorry, you're on mute, so we can't hear you. And it's going to be a jam-packed 60 minutes, so we'll be covering a lot of ground over the next 60 minutes. So why are we doing this? Well, we like bringing people together to learn. That's what we do at Skillfluence. We've got contact with a lot of universities and people within them who are finding ways to develop researchers. So we feel that we've got the reach to facilitate a conversation. And also we want to support the community right now. That feels more important than ever. After the last webinar, we arranged 2 small network groups that worked brilliantly well. So we're going to do that again, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the webinar. Who are we? Well, we've been around for about 4 years. We've trained more than 6,000 researchers now, academics, PhD students. We've got an amazing range of trainers, over 20 of them that are real subject matter experts. And for those of you that attended the last webinar, you met a couple of them there. And we're working with over 40 universities across the UK and Europe at the moment. And we really focus on supporting and developing researchers to look outwards, giving them practical skills in how to communicate, collaborate, innovate, and work with or in industry, business, or startups. Basically for us, it's all about helping them make a difference. Right now we're fully online, but usually we're a bit of a mix of online and in person with workshops, residentials, and facilitated events. I'm Alison Gray. I founded Skillfluence in 2015 after spending time in sabbatical in the States. And when I came back, I set up Skillfluence. And then I've got a few of my colleagues here today. We've got Zach Sorrells, who some of you might have met before. He's running tech support in the background. And we've got Rachel Clark is on chat box duty. And I think Joanne Haggerty's here too. I saw her saying that she's had her lunch and she's ready to rock and roll. So she'll also be, I'm sure, saying hi in the chat box too. So feel free to make comments and chat and ask questions in the chat box. Okay, so let's turn now to the main part of the webinar, where we look at how to make sense of what's going on and plan ahead during these times of really sort of extreme uncertainty. Again, if you've got any questions or comments for our speakers, please do jot them into the chat box, and I'll try, we're really squeezed for time. We try and fill in, build a lot into the 1 hour. So I'll try and get to your questions if I have a chance. So first of all, I'd like to make a big welcome to Christabel Soares, who's joining us. She's the Graduate Network Manager based at the University of Surrey, and she manages training for SEPNet, which is the Southeast Physics Network, and that includes at least 9 universities. And GradNet runs 2 main training events. They've got summer and winter schools. Winter school's all about teamwork, communication, styles of leadership, and she's been running a wonderful residential summer school for physicists to meet employers and take part in industry-led workshops. We've recently started working with Christabel to develop an online summer programme. So, welcome Christabel, lovely to see you.
Hello. Yes, I'm sporting a haircut from the 1980s.
But I also maybe mention your beautiful background, because you always come with a wonderful background.
Yes, because I work with physicists, I was very fortunate to go to the island of La Palma in Tenerife, and I took this photograph of the observatories perched up there. And as you can see, I look nothing like the photo on my slide.
That's the haircuts for you. Oh dear. Well, welcome. So let's get started. What experience did you have of online training before March this year?
Yeah, very little. Most of the training that I do for SEPNet and GradNet was residential or maybe one day face-to-face courses, usually taking place in the southeast at either a university or a London-based venue.
Yeah. And now you had a summer school planned. When did you start to realise that things would need to change?
Yeah, so I had a 4-day summer school at Hurstmonceux Castle in Eastbourne organised, and it usually takes me a year to organise employers to come and run physical workshops, showing PhD students how to transfer their research skills into the workplace. And in March, I started to think, I don't think this is going to happen, but I was ever hopeful that by July it would all be over and I could run my 4-day summer school after all that planning. And it's just a great opportunity to meet everyone and connect with all the students, because I'm based in Surrey, but I'm reaching out to 8 other Southeast Physics departments. And really, I was quite apprehensive of making a decision and just cancelling it, but the decision was taken out of my hands when the actual venue said it won't be safe to do it. So I felt relieved that they had made the decision, but then I was caught with deciding what to do next, just accept that and not run a summer school at all.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you'd said to me when we were chatting before is that you managed to turn it into a bit of a positive, though, in your mind as well, because you started looking ahead to next year.
Yes, so I was really disappointed because I'd got a really good lineup of companies, and it takes a lot of effort to try and get the right person from these large companies to come and deliver a workshop. And but I thought, okay, let's turn this on its head, and maybe I should just say to them, sorry that we're going to have to cancel, but could you tentatively put it in your diary for next year, because I've already got a date booked for that one. So I have got them, you know, if nothing else happens in between, I don't have to think about who I'm going to get next year. So that's the positive side of it. Yes.
I love that you've done that. You've turned something that was really disappointing into something that, well, at least you've got some benefits come from that. So what was your decision-making process for running the summer event once you knew it couldn't go ahead in the expected format?
Well, the disappointment I felt was for the final year students in particular, who were going to maybe connect with some of these employers and look for a job with these employers. So I felt I should maybe try something, but I have to say I was apprehensive because the physical nature, the networking, the social activities that we do, the offline chats that they have during the lunch, the refreshment breaks, it all adds value. And I just couldn't see how something online could work. And I didn't think it honed in on my skills either, because I am very much a people person, and I was reluctant. But when I attended the Skillfluence webinar, it planted a seed, and I thought maybe I could try doing something new. And because I'd had no experience of using Zoom, I maybe had a couple of meetings with Teams, Microsoft Teams. I didn't know how to approach it, but having attended your webinar made me think maybe we can work together and do something. But I had to convince my executive director for SEPNet that it would be a good thing to do. And I just felt that maybe I should try doing something, offer an alternative, and if I fail, well, at least I tried and we can learn from it and maybe develop it for the future. So I did email the students that couldn't attend this year's summer school to get some feedback on how they would feel about an online workshop. And a few of them seemed quite keen. So I thought, let's just run with it then.
Yeah.
And, having discussed it with Rachel, yourself and Zach, we've put together quite an exciting and unique program for SETnet. So I'm really looking forward to it and not feeling so apprehensive about the tech.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say as well about, you know that it's something new and different, so it might not work exactly the way you want it to, but you're willing to take that risk of giving it a go, because I know when we were chatting before, one of the things was, if you didn't do this, there wouldn't be anything there for them. So, it's great that you've kind of given it a go. So what are you doing to plan beyond that? So beyond, you've got your summer school, you've had to take that online. What are you doing beyond that?
Well, I am a very organised person, as my colleagues will vouch, and I don't like uncertainty. I'm not sure anybody does, but also being an event organiser, you do have to plan for the future. So I'd rather know what's coming up. And I've just made the decision that I'm not going to do any face-to-face before Christmas. And the 2 or 3 events that I've got before that, I'm looking at doing them online now. And anything beyond December, it's going to be a hybrid. So most of them are going to be residential. And I think that I might, if we can, do 1 day face-to-face and 1 day online, so they still get the 2-day experience. The online part won't be a full day. But I'm basically having a backup plan. I'd like to do it face-to-face, but have a backup of doing it online. And, I think the one good thing is that where researchers are reluctant to give up 4 days or 2 days to be physically present, being online for just maybe an hour each week or as a one-off, I think I might actually get more engagement. And certainly with the registrations that I've already got for this online workshop that we're doing together, within 2 weeks, I've got the number that I was hoping to get already, which normally with my physical courses, it takes a good month of weekly advertising via email. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the things is you would normally be launching your program 1st of September. And I know that you have a glossy brochure and you do it all, you're super organized, it's all ready to go. What about this year then?
I know. So I usually spend the summer months putting together a lovely little booklet showing all the events that we've got going planned for the year. I have quotes from the previous year to encourage students and lovely pictures of the event. And none of that can happen now. And basically, I'm just going to have to take it a day at a time, and when an event gets confirmed, just put it online, and I won't be able to launch my usual GradNet training program at induction day for the physics PhD students, and we also have an induction day in London, and that's when we tell them about it as well. So it'll have to all be done online, and we'll just have to keep telling them to refer to the website for a link to whatever is happening.
Yeah.
So it's a very long, drawn out procedure this year, and something completely different.
Yeah, but it sounds also that it's a bit more live and responsive as well, which can be, can have its benefits too, I guess, and that you can respond to need and to what's going on.
Yes, and I think it's one has to be flexible throughout this process. Yeah. And patient.
Well, that's very true. We've got an interesting point from one of our attendees from asking about, or kind of talking about the fact that online events can increase accessibility for researchers, and in particular they're talking about people with caring responsibilities or disabilities.
Yes.
Is that something that you kind of feel is the case as well? Do you feel it makes it more accessible to people?
Yes, well, that's what I was hoping, that people with caring responsibilities or difficulty in actually getting away to the residential events, it will make it more accessible. And certainly for this course, we'll be looking to asking the delegates, whether it was a much better experience for them and more convenient as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So in the sort of short to medium term, it's all kind of a little bit up in the air. But what do you think the impact's going to be longer term when we are back to people being able to meet perfectly safely in residential environments or wherever? What do you think the longer term impact's going to be? Do you think there will be more online training?
I think possibly yes. I see it being more, because it will be more accessible. Even for the participants and the speakers. For employers won't need to give up a whole day, and quite often for my residential schools they have to come the night before. So if they just have to appear for an hour, it'll mean more engagement from people.
Yeah.
We'd have to work out how to do the networking part, and I think that'll evolve as we get better technology. Maybe I'm not sure how it's going to work in chat rooms, because a lot of useful information is done offline over a coffee, or we have barbecues and rocket launching sessions and things, and it's just that casual conversation where you pick up and make connections. So that's the side I think that might be tricky, but it may evolve. So yes, I think definitely my program will start to be a bit more online, and the savings that we'll make, because we're not having to pick a venue and pay for accommodation and meals as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think with universities going to be strapped for funding, when it comes to training, particularly for PGRs, if they're struggling to fund my program, if I was able to offer it online, then we haven't got those additional costs and we'll have those savings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I mean, it sounds like if we can crack the social mingle thing online, then that would make a huge difference. I don't think we're there yet with it. It doesn't feel like you kind of think that can be fully done online, but most other elements it feels that it can be done. There's loads of comments and lots of interesting comments and questions coming through. What about 3 tips that you would give to anyone looking to develop researchers online?
Yes, well, I would sort of think, what is it that you actually want to get out of the workshop or whatever it is you're doing online? What value are you bringing to it, or what value you're offering? Because you can't, I don't think one should just switch to online because that's the only thing available. Really think hard about what it is you want to, what's your goal and what do you want to achieve. Make sure that it's in bite-sized chunks, really, because nobody wants to be staring at their laptop for half a day. And I think also make it interactive, whatever it is you're delivering, because just to be sitting quietly, I don't see the benefit of it, just watching something. I think it needs to be interactive so that that people are engaged and they're not looking at their emails with one ear out on what the speaker is saying. And then the final tip, I think, would be to be flexible and be open to change. And I have to say, I was not maybe as open to change as I should have been, but I think proving that I'm going, I've proved it now because I have decided to go ahead with the online workshop and looking to the future of providing more online stuff. So be flexible and open to change.
Yeah, and that's really great advice. I mean, I think, we've all been pushed into having to be, creative and change the way we're doing things and respond to needs. So I think that idea of be prepared to change and be flexible is really important. I'm just checking any questions from any of our attendees. I think there's lots of comments in there. I think we'll close that for now, but thank you very much for all the top tips there. That's been really interesting. I am really hoping that it goes brilliantly well next month. August, isn't it? It's August that it runs.
Yes, I have every confidence.
I think it'll be fab. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much, Christabel. That's been fascinating.
You're welcome.
I'll speak to you soon. Okay, thank you. All right, thanks very much there to Christabel. That's been really interesting. Okay, move my slides on. So now I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Michelle Carmichael. She's the Doctoral Training Hub Coordinator for the Lifetime CDT at the University of Glasgow. Michelle had a fantastic retreat planned for the CDT cohort in April, and Skillfluence, we were all lined up for running some workshops there as part of that, but when things moved online, we ended up delivering some IP workshops and our 6-week Connecting with Industry program instead. But that was just a small part of like a huge program of events, a much bigger program of online events that Michelle's been organising for the CDT. So welcome, Michelle. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me along, Alison.
Yeah, no, great. And so tell us a little bit about why you so quickly tried out online delivery of events and training, because you were very quick off the mark.
Yeah, so for us, I think it was about the week before lockdown when the University of Glasgow had put out a notice that all events should be cancelled for the foreseeable future. So I think I contacted you actually a few days before we even went into lockdown about moving things online. As you had said at the start there, we had a retreat scheduled for the last week in April. This was a week-long training event at a stately home in the Scotland Highlands. So 1 month after lockdown, that's where we were meant to be, and sadly that got cancelled. So that was really our priority. We wanted to deliver all the same training, albeit in a different format, move it online. So we were enthusiastic about moving it online, and after we had moved the retreat online, we could see potential to bring forward training that's taken place in year 2 and year 3. We identified the positives in this, where we could keep the students busy, and also it means when the labs reopen later down the line, which is the stage we're starting to get to now, the students can fully focus on their research and they don't need to take any more time out basically for the rest of the year to be attending skills training sessions.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you see as being the alternative to running training online? What's happening, you know, if people don't do that?
I think the alternative was basically to cancel the sessions, and I know for the majority of PhD students who aren't within a CDT, they've maybe not had the offer for as much training as what our students have had. Our students have had over 30 hours of training since lockdown, and this isn't including time that they've spent working on assessments or completing group activities. So the hours that they've spent has been vast, basically. And our main priority was mental health for the students. We've got some students that are at home on their own, they don't have any family around. So we've kept them busy. There's been a reason to get up every day, get on Zoom with your fellow cohort and chat. We've also had informal coffee chats every 2 weeks where we discuss any worries or wellbeing concerns with the students.
Yeah, so it kind of feels like you've really kind of, I guess, kept on top of things with people, and they've been checking in with each other, but you've also been checking in with them in different ways. Yeah, with regular contact. So what have you been doing around training and events and cohort building? What's been going on? You've over 30 hours, sounds amazing.
Yep, so we started off, yourself, Skillfluence, delivered Connecting with Industry and IP training for the students. We also done RRI training and a multidisciplinary training course, which was 10 different lectures delivered by supervisors on the CDT. We also hosted a career series where our industry partners came along to talk to the students about their career and answer questions. And we've brought forward, as I was saying earlier, training from like year 2 and 3. So the students are now doing a Dragon's Den competition, with business training to do this, and they're pitching tomorrow actually to the judges. So all the training has been interactive. There's been small group discussions, and it's gave the trainer or the presenters the opportunity to get to know the students, and for the students to continue speaking to each other and building a strong cohort. basically.
And I mean, I think that's something that comes up a lot. People are worried that online you're not getting that kind of bonding experience and talking to each other. Do you feel that's something that has been recreated to a certain extent?
Yeah, I think our students obviously already knew each other and had formed quite a strong cohort bond, to be honest with you. But I think with the online, especially younger people, they're used to talking online. It's a way that they're used to working. So I think it's been good.
Yeah, no, that's fab. So what are you doing to plan for the current and the next cohort at this time of uncertainty? How are you planning ahead for that?
So for the current cohort, we're now in Scotland, we're entering phase 2, so labs are starting to reopen. So we're moving to a blended training model basically, where the students will do half a day skills training, and that frees up the rest of their week to go into labs. So at the moment, next week actually the students are having 2 weeks off with no training because we've kept them really busy over the past 14 weeks, and I think they do need a break. But when they come back, we're starting with quality assurance training, leadership training, and project management self-study module for the students, so they can start to do it in their own time. For the new cohort, we've got different contingencies in place, but at the moment we're hoping the students will start in October as planned, but they will follow the blended training module. So previously our students would go on a 3-week rotation around all the different universities within the CDT. So this will be delayed until next year, and they'll start doing the blended model. So we're going to try and do some quizzes, maybe some online escape rooms as well, to help try and build a strong cohort, because it will be different from meeting in face to face. This is people that they don't know each other, they've never met before, but I'm confident and enthusiastic that they will build a strong cohort, albeit it'll have started off online.
Yeah, an online escape room. Is that...
Yes, apparently this is the new craze. This is what you can do. They've moved the escape rooms online.
I love it. Brilliant. It's just like so much, ingenuity going on at the moment. Now, you mentioned that you've got a number of different universities involved. So how's that working? Because Scotland's opening at different times to the English universities, and then each university's got different policies around what they're doing. How are you managing that?
Yeah, so that was something that we were a bit unsure about, because we were up faced with what if the English universities can go back as normal in October and maybe Glasgow can't. We didn't know what we were facing, but over the past few weeks we've had clarity from each of the universities that PhD students can start as planned. They might not get into the lab as much as what we would like, but they will have a rotation to work to. That's now been confirmed for all the universities that we're partnered with. So that makes it slightly easier, but we did have 3 different options. So one of them was maybe delay start to January, or start doing a wet and dry start. So we're maybe going to go from October to January doing all online, and then in January move to access to the labs if that was possible.
Yeah. So what are you doing in terms of contingency planning then, and being responsive to new information kind of coming in?
Yeah, that's it. We're keeping in touch. We speak to each other every few weeks at the management meetings in case anything's changed. And we've got plan A, B and C, which I think is what's needed, because you don't know how things are going to change locally as well. It might not be UK wide, it might be more localised now. I think just being prepared for the different options is all we can do.
Yeah, I love that. So plan A, B and C, and maybe a plan Z. If none of those apply, I think that's
work your way through the alphabet, plan for as much as you can.
I think that's just the way it's kind of got to be at the moment though, isn't it? So in terms of thinking even beyond that, so once we get back to normal, which is hard to imagine right now, but it will happen at some point in the future, how do you think that's going to impact how you're going to deliver CDT events, CDT training in the future?
Well, I think having moved so much online, it's opened our eyes a wee bit to what is available. So earlier on I had mentioned the coffee chats, which is every 2 weeks. We've got students spread across 4 different universities within the UK and Ireland. So previously months would go by without seeing these students, where now we've actually been speaking to them every 2 weeks. So I think that's something that in the future, it might not be every 2 weeks when life goes back to normal, maybe every month or every 2 months, but I think we will use that check-in online coffee chat facility to speak to the students and find out what's going on and how they are. It's the same for we do monthly management meetings, and industry partners are invited along. So the majority of staff are in a room in Glasgow and everyone else is zooming into the meeting. And I think going forward, we've agreed to change that the meeting will now always take place with everyone individually joining through Zoom, so that we're all in the same situation. Because before, a lot of the partners felt like they weren't really in the meeting, they were just watching 15 people in a room in Glasgow having a meeting, they didn't really feel part of it. I think that's something going forward that we'll continue to do. We also moved, last week we had a joint CDT conference that we moved online. So we had been planning this for about 9 months. Then 12 weeks ago, the organising committee were obviously faced with the question, do we postpone this event or do we move it online? So we went with the latter and moved it online, and I'm glad that we did, because it was well attended. We had over 200 attended across 2 days. It was 8 different webinar sessions. So it was really successful. We also had first year students who haven't chaired a session before or done posters before, and they've done all of this for the first time, and it was online. So it was a big achievement for the students too.
Yeah, and I mean, that is something that's important to note, because at the moment, a lot of this stuff, we're doing it for the first time and trying it out, and we're learning what tools there are out there and what we can use to make it happen. And it's not always going to be perfect first time round, but it's learning what's worked and what's not. Yeah. So someone's mentioned Slack in the group, in the webinar chat. Is that something you've used at all? Is there any kind of like little pieces of software that you use particularly to kind of keep in touch with people, or has it mostly been by Zoom or Teams?
Mostly been by Zoom. We use Zoom webinar facility for the online conference, which worked really well. And out with that, we've been using Teams and the team chat, but I've not actually heard of Slack before.
All right, okay, yeah, no, I mean, this is the thing. There's so many different little tools, and, you know, some people swear by them, other folk have never come across them before. So just some final points then. What advice would you give, some top tips that you'd give to anyone looking to develop researchers online and plan ahead?
I think don't be scared of the technology. Practice, familiarise yourself with it, practice in advance, and all will be fine, as long as everyone's internet connection is working fine on the day. But yeah, plenty of practice in advance. I think employ the right training providers for your needs, for what your students need and what you're wanting to deliver, so that it's right for them and that they don't feel that they're wasting their time sitting online for 1 hour or 2 hours a day, whatever it may be. So make sure you get that right is very important as well. And I think a point is that the students have actually really engaged with this. They've enjoyed being busy, they've been happy to do the training online, and we've had a lot of good feedback from the students. So I think it's maybe just be open-minded that everyone is actually happy to do things online. For example, the event last week, the attendance was probably better because it was online than what it would have been in person, because people don't need to spend 2 days to go to an event, travel at each side. They could just join into the sessions and the webinars that they were interested in.
Yeah.
Top tips.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that 2 of the key things for people developing researchers is usually time and engagement. You know, when you're planning events for people, that's always what folks say to us, oh, people don't have time to attend, and will they actually turn up? And so, you know, to hear you say that people are actually engaging in it and taking part is really, really brilliant. Yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. That's been very interesting, and I think leads us beautifully into our next speaker. So thank you very much for that, Michelle. That's been fabulous.
No problem. Thanks.
Cheers. Okay, so let me take us on to our final speaker. And I'm delighted to have Elaine Ma join us to provide another perspective. So this is a slightly different take on things. Welcome, Elaine. Now, Elaine's a first-year PhD student at the Lifetime CDT. So we've just been talking to Michelle, who's been organising all the training for the Lifetime CDT. So Elaine's at the University of Glasgow, and right now is the time when she's going to be receiving the most training, I guess, in her entire 4-year period of doing her PhD. And of course, at the moment, it's all online. So welcome, Elaine. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So what was your experience before March? What experience did you have of online training?
So it wasn't too much either. I think it was mostly Moodle programs. So just given access to presentations and slides and just kind of being expected to go through them in my own time, which was fine, I think. But I think over the last couple of months, I've definitely preferred the more interactive kind of training. So yeah, I think it was quite good.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that you kind of mentioned to me is that you found when you do Moodle training, it's kind of you're on your own, but when you're doing more interactive stuff, you're kind of like getting to try out things or kind of practice stuff. Has that been important to you?
Yeah, I think I noticed a really big difference between the effectiveness of the two different styles of training. The interactive training, I think I come away from that with a lot more skills, and I've learned a lot more rather than just kind of going through it. And I think it makes me actually go through it, because I feel like if you're given material, sometimes you just don't go through it.
Yeah, I know the feeling. You skim. That's yeah, skim reading of it, or not necessarily, you know, there's not the motivation, whereas when there's other people there, that can work well. So how's the online experience been for you in the last 3 months? How have you found it?
Sorry, Alison, I just lost your recording there. I think my internet just went.
That's okay. So I'll just ask the question again. No problem. How has the online experience been in the last 3 months? How have you found it in terms of training?
So I think we're all learning something new. Even as students, we're trying to learn how to use that technology and the best way for us to use it to get the most out of all this training. But I think I have missed the in-personal training a bit. It's a bit sad that I do find that in some cases networking is a bit easier in person, but also using Zoom, it kind of, when you're in like the breakout groups, it does force you to actually speak and contribute to conversation, which is quite good. So I just think it's a matter of learning which platform to use and what's most effective, I think.
Yeah. I mean, do you find, so when you're doing things like breakout groups and I know that Zach will have been throwing you into many a breakout group during the training, do you feel that everyone is able to feel involved in that and able to contribute and speak up in the way they would in a kind of, if you were at a table group at a kind of in-person workshop?
So yeah, it is sometimes a bit difficult to have some flow on Zoom, especially when everyone's internet is a bit funny and there might be a bit of a delay, which is kind of difficult. But I think if it's structured conversations are something that's very helpful for that. And then you just make sure that you provide plenty of time. So training that may take an hour in person will probably take longer in Zoom to make sure that there is time for decent conversations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've tried out a load of different platforms. You were saying you have been thrust into all sorts of different, you know, platforms and different tools to use. What ones have worked particularly well for you?
So personally, I think there's been a mixture. So I probably use Zoom the most, and I receive most of my training through Zoom, which is great. But also Microsoft Teams is really good as well for teamwork assignments and things like that we get off from training. And I think, did someone else mention, is it Stitch as well? I think that's a new thing that I've been introduced to.
Okay.
Really good for things like after webinars when you want continued conversation. So maybe for networking, that's really good as well. That seems to work.
Yeah, is that Slack maybe rather than, is it Slack? I mean, honestly, it could be Stitch. I don't know. I mean, they're probably, that would be a great name for one. Okay, and then it's great. It's just that, yeah, I think we're all learning all the different tools, and we'll probably settle in on a few. I think, like with the training the Connecting with Industry program, you had some training in advance, so you could go onto the e-learning platform, and then you've got the kind of interactive element, and then you've got kind of personal assignments. How did it work for you, having that all split out like that?
Yeah, so I think that was particularly effective just because maybe there was a lot of material to learn to start with. So being given the material beforehand and given, you know, just a small amount of like maybe a 10-minute exercise at the end prior to joining the group conversation was really good. And also just makes the conversation more enriching as well. Like people have, you know, we've all received the same material and we all have different opinions about it. So it's great to meet up for an hour so afterwards to discuss each other's opinions and gain some more insight.
Yeah. And you guys were really good at kind of all taking part and all speaking up. So that was fab. So what have been the challenges and benefits of going online for you?
So I think the challenges are probably the technology, and yeah, just learning how to use the various different platforms. But I think the benefits are definitely more. For me personally, I find more time to go to more training. Because as you know, I mean, obviously at the moment I'm not in the lab, but I also do have a lot of work at home to work on my PhD. But doing training online, it does cut the time either side for traveling and so on, and it means that there's a lot more training that I'm interested in that I can actually attend. But also, if there is clashes, the technology allows you to record the training as well, so it's things that I can go back to later on in my own time.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So thinking ahead in terms of training over the next 6 to 12 months for you, what would be helpful? You know, how do we manage this uncertainty?
So I definitely think a blended kind of approach to training would be really good. And like the way of, you know, doing that maybe most effectively is understanding what training can now actually be done online and will be as effective as it would be if it wasn't done in person, and maybe identifying what training has to be kind of done in person, and maybe that can be scheduled for later on, rather than, you know, just rushing to get it done now and then. But also I think what's quite important, especially with us coming out of lockdown and getting access to labs again, is understanding student situation and what's in general the kind of consensus for the whole cohort, in terms of timing and how much training that we can actually handle while trying to get back into the lab and, you know, get data for our thesis and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think that's it, it's the balance, isn't it? Because I know you're desperate to get back, you know, to actually get in and start doing things. So, and I think understanding the stresses and the priorities for students is going to be really important. Longer term, what would you like to see with online versus offline, or is it versus, but, you know, online, offline training?
Sorry, yeah, I think I kind of mentioned that in the previous question. So yeah, I think very much a more blended format. I think with the CTT that I'm on, it's great. I love that we have so many different opportunities to learn lots of different skills, you know, kind of make me a good scientist, but as well as make me really employable, which is great. But there are the stresses of the fact that, you know, training is spread out through the 4 years. But I do realise that as I go, I'll probably get busier and busier and get, you know, chained to my desk or the lab very much. So I think there's definitely valuable lessons to be learned from the things that we've had to do because of COVID in terms of training. So I think we just need to remember them and transfer them to the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to finish up, what 3 tips or pieces of advice would you give to anyone that's looking to develop researchers like yourself online?
Yeah, so I think so utilising online interactive training, I'm definitely for that. So learn what's effective, efficient and valuable, and also maybe explore and understand your resources. So there are so many different resources, but it means that you can find something that's tailored to your needs, which is great. But definitely take the time to explore them and learn how to use them. So try and reduce the technical difficulties during your training. And probably what most important is to get feedback. I think a lot of training is really good for that. They follow up at the end and ask you for feedback. But yeah, it's good to learn from each other and figure out how to improve training, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds great. And I mean, one of the things that you said to me when we were chatting before was, we're all learning, and as a PhD student, you don't necessarily know all the training that that you would want or need until it's offered to you, I suppose. Now, before we finish up, you had mentioned that you're working on a science podcast, or you're hoping to produce a science podcast. Would you like to do a little pitch for your podcast at the moment?
Yeah, so we are in the process of starting up a podcast. So a small group of volunteers from our Lifetime CDT have started to do that, and I think that's just a podcast that we hope to share some interesting science with, also talk about PhD life and the kind of tips for being a PhD student, and hopefully we'll get that started soon.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you ever so much, Elaine. That's been really interesting. It's been great to hear the student PhD researcher perspective on things. That's fab. And thanks very much for joining us. Okay, so thank you very much to all our speakers. That's been really fascinating, very interesting. So let me just take you, as we begin to kind of close, take you on to some of my thoughts on this. In terms of short-term planning, basically anything before Christmas, make a decision based on what's possible right now and stick with that. Anything happening next year, wait and see approach, if that will give you enough time to implement. And by November, I reckon we'll probably have a better sense of what might be possible to do in person. Then gain buy-in. So discuss with the people who are involved in the decision making, and make sure that includes the potential participants. This is a time where we've really got to find solutions, I guess, and use our ingenuity, our creativity, explore possibilities and try new things. And as Christabel said, not everything will necessarily work, but we've got to be willing to give it a try and take the risk, I guess, of doing something rather than waiting to see. Think about what you're actually trying to achieve with the training. How could it be done if you can't meet in person? So 2 key challenges for developing researchers are usually around time, their time, and their engagement. So how can online help with that? Then it might be about considering a blended or a kind of hybrid approach with online training short term, but the intention to meet in person when possible, perhaps for shorter sessions at a later date. And I know that quite a few of the people we're talking to and quite a lot of the universities, we're doing online work for them. And then the hope is that come February, March, there might be opportunities to do a smaller networking event in person. Thinking longer term, well, we don't know exactly when things will be back to normal, but when they are, we'll hopefully be able to benefit from the best of both worlds. Everyone is going to be more able and capable and confident in using online tools to connect, to communicate and learn. We don't want to squander that know-how, so start thinking now about what you've tried that you'd want to keep. What's actually surprisingly worked really well online for you? What would you want to build into your approach that makes use of our increased online skills? And then finally, be kind to yourself. I don't think there's any right answer, is there? Not everything's going to work as planned. You're doing the best you can. And that leads kind of nicely to my next slide, which I mentioned at the beginning. So last time round, we had tea and biscuits. This time round, we're going for a coffee break. We piloted these more relaxed sessions, kind of conversational sessions last month. As many of you said, you missed the coffee time networking. It was really successful. We had 25 participants from 20 plus universities, and we've had lots of great feedback from both the groups. So thanks very much to everyone who took part in the pilot. If there is anyone who did take part that wants to mention or comment on it in the chat box and say what you thought of it, then I'm sure people would be interested to hear. but to give you a sense of what it was about, it was a small group forum specifically for people at a university with a role that included developing researchers. So it's really great for anyone in researcher development, in researcher networks, CDTs, DTPs, IAAs. I've probably missed a few acronyms there. So we've got limited spaces as each group is made up of around 10 or 12 people. We've had to keep the numbers really small just to keep it meaningful, really. And it's to network, it's to share, and it's to discuss. Somewhere you can gain mutual support around current challenges or areas of interest, and a chance for the group to maybe go a bit deeper and explore some of the things that we've talked about today. So we provide you with a beautiful virtual room. It's lovely, where you can meet up. We'll give you a bit of structure for the conversation, and then we'll get you into smaller groups, and we'll even provide you with coffee and cookies. And what's great is the cookies are completely virtual, so they're calorie free. Rachel is hopefully, thank you Liz, yes, how do you sign up? Good question. So Rachel is adding the links, there we go. We've got a couple of dates that are up on the slide you can see there, the July the 28th and August the 5th. So you can sign up there. We'll also send the link in the email that we send after the webinar that includes the webinar recording link. So we'll send a link to the coffee breaks as well. So please do consider joining us. We think you'll find it useful, stimulating and supportive, and it was actually kind of good fun as well. So, so please do join us for that. Thank you also for all the fantastic chat. Lots of interesting chat going on, and nice to hear from folk that they found the coffee session useful. And also, you know, people were a little bit nervous about coming along, but it was chilled, it was relaxed. So, you know, please do think about coming along. So just to finish up now, I'm in good time. Hopefully you found the conversations interesting. I found them really enlightening. I think there's a lot to gain from hearing from others, what they've experienced, what their thought processes were. I just think that's really helpful to get those different perspectives from Christabel, who's right in the heart of having made a decision, but it's not fully running yet. You know, and that kind of exciting time of what's it going to be like, to Michelle, who's run and delivered over 30 hours of content, and Elaine, who's had the experience of being on the receiving end of some of that training. So I hope you found it helpful. I hope you have gained a new idea, a new insight, a bit of learning or action, maybe some inspiration, and hopefully a bit of reassurance as well that you're not on your own, and that everyone's kind of going through the same things too. So thank you ever so much for joining us again. Please do keep in touch, or thank you for joining us if this is your first time as well. Welcome. Feel free to contact me if you've got any questions, if you've got any training queries or ideas for future webinars. We're always interested in discussing training possibilities, so get in touch. Happy to talk them through. We've got a very short evaluation, just 4 questions that you'll be taken to automatically, I think, when you leave the webinar. We really appreciate your feedback, so please do let us know what you thought and give us some ideas for what you think might be useful in future. We're planning our next webinar now, so we'll be in touch and send out more details soon. In the meantime, have a great week, everyone. Goodbye, and thank you very much. Thank you.